speak to James Price, former Chief of Staff and Senior Special Advisor to the Chancellor of the Exchequer. James Mababa, how are you?
All right, my love. I've not been attacked by any mysterious packages nor delayed by Sadiq Khan's failing tube service just yet.
Good, I'm glad. I mean, you made the right decision by staying at home and doing everything via Zoom. Now, join me in speculation, would you, or tell me that I'm a conspiracy theorist about all... I mean, there is a... I'm going to talk to you about the things you're supposed to be talking about in a minute, but there is a pattern of behaviour that we have seen members of Wagner mercenaries accused of, or the IRGC, taking place on domestic soil. It doesn't get spoken about in the media much, but these little things that are sort of meant to test us, to try us, to show us that if they wanted to cause us harm, they could.
Look, we should be in absolutely no doubt that the world, and I'm sorry to depress everybody on a Friday morning, the world is heading into a much, much more dangerous time and place. We don't realise quite how lucky we've had it, frankly, really, since the end of the Cold War. And even with the horrors of Islamist attacks, we've not taken them, I think, nearly seriously enough. And we won't go in right now to all the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and things like that, but just generally in our domestic security, we, I think, take far too much for granted. You look at the horrors that we've seen on our continent with Ukraine. That's obviously Russian aggression, but Russia themselves have what? They attacked the Skripals, who had defected over to the UK and killed people in the southwest, where you and I are from, with bloody nerve agents and poisons and things like that. They've assassinated other people on streets here. They've done all kinds of other things that we obviously don't know about in the public domain. You've got the numbers, the sheer numbers of other Islamist terror attacks that are thwarted by the amazing security services that we've got. And yet people, by and large, don't seem to be as alive to the problem as perhaps they should be. We still squabble about so many disastrously unimportant things in our domestic politics, when really we need to face up to the fact that in the Communist Party of China, we have an epochal enemy. In Vladimir Putin's Russia, we have an enemy who only understands strength. And all of this hypocritical nonsense about rules-based international order stuff, that's all lovely, well and good. But when you've got someone as evil as Putin, who only understands strength and is in an alliance with China and is in alliance with, as you mentioned, the Islamic Republic of Iran, who have been sponsoring terrorism right across that region and further beyond, those people really are in an axis of evil, and they hate everything about us. It's nothing to do with what the UK has ever done. It's nothing to do with what America's done. They literally hate the fact that you, Alex, are allowed to speak your mind, both as a free person who can vote, as a woman, as all these other things. They hate us for our freedoms, and we've gone soft and we've forgotten this. And, you know, maybe we're going to start seeing the effects of this on our streets. I hope not, but I fear so.
Well, we've gone soft on defending our freedoms. We've gone pretty hard on denying them, it seems, when it comes to Starmer. We've gone soft as well, haven't we, when it comes to benefits, worklessness. I mean, all these things that, again, add up to make us a limp and useless nation on the international stage. China getting a march when it comes to dominating the global economy. And yet here we are with almost 1 million under 25s who aren't in work, and they're not studying. They're not doing anything. The highest number of workless 16 to 24-year-olds since 2014. And yet we keep being told, oh, we need people to come over and pick vegetables in fields. We need people to come over to work in the hospitalities industry. We need record-breaking numbers of migrants, 750,000 of them, in fact, to do simple jobs. You go to the local hospital, the porter's probably going to be a migrant. You go to the local pub, the barman's probably going to be a migrant. You order a taxi or an Uber, the driver's going to be a migrant. You go and, you know, try and find work on a farm, the labourers there are going to be migrants. And yet you've got 1 million people under 25. They're exactly the sort of people who should be doing these jobs.
Yeah, it's completely topsy-turvy, and I'm afraid that this has been coming for a long time, and we've not been serious about this. The Conservatives, my party, that's my old party, my current party, hopefully friend party, were very good, actually, when they came in. One of the few good things they managed to do was to try and start reforming the credit system, and to say in universal credit that work must always pay. Because if you're someone who could make more money just sat on their bum at home all day rather than going out to work, well, why wouldn't you do that? That makes sense as an an economic, rational actor. And it's mad that there are people who are going out and slogging their guts at work all day, being taxed an extraordinary amount. By the way, let's remember taxes are now the highest they've been since the Second World War.
Don't I know
and they
it.
show no signs of coming down. In fact, but thanks to Rachel Thieves, they're going to be going up even more. But we're subsidising, as you say, more and more people. And to hide that, to mask these figures, we're juicing the economy with huge numbers of mass immigration, of low-skilled workers. Now, immigration can be a good thing, right? My fiance is American. I'm very happy that she's here. You get the best and brightest from around the world. We want that. We want to be the grammar school of the world. And in a kind of competitive race with other countries for the top talent, we want to be as open as possible. But if we are letting in huge numbers of unskilled people, and by the way, letting them bring their families over, their dependents, you know, the second cousin and third granny twice removed, and shoving all of them on the welfare bill as well, that's not good for the economy. And that's before we start to consider the quite deep and deleterious cultural impacts when you import lots of people who don't share the same values that most of us do.
Right, and the thing is now, I think the sort of young people's bracket, this demographic, the under 25s, are the ones who are the most out of work, the ones who get the most sick benefits as well, because they've all gone balmy, because they spend their life just, you know, being warped by algorithms on their phones. Look at, you know, you can spend a lifetime if you're that age just doing this. You don't even have to look up. You don't have to learn to talk to somebody. You don't need person-on-person interaction. You don't need to leave the house. You can just sit there like a sad little, you know, overly triggered automaton of social media, just flick, 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 flick. And I think we really need to start discussing this. I mean, this ties, I think, to some degree to disability benefit claims surging now to $250,000 each year until 2030. That's the projection. £31 billion for working age disability benefits bill. 31 billion. And very often what do we hear is the main thing. Once upon a time, it used to be that, you know, someone had a bad back and they couldn't go into work. Well, you can work from home now. I'm sure we can help sort that one out. But apparently, over 1 million now are claiming disability benefits because their kids have got autism and ADHD and things like that. I don't understand this stuff. A third of current PIP claims are linked to mental health issues, with anxiety and depression the single biggest stated reason for a claim. Guess what? If you've got depression, go out and work. It's good for the soul. If you've got anxiety, I mean, this anxiety thing, it didn't exist when we were growing up, did it, James?
You know, people were too poor to be able to worry about having things like anxiety. Look, I think that we've made some really good strides in maybe, let's say, the past 2 decades until the last few years with mental health concerns, right? I don't think anybody disagrees that there are some serious mental health problems that lots of people suffer from. They can be incredibly debilitating. And when you have kind of horrendous suicidal thoughts, as many people do, you know, you do need to go and get help about it. I do think that perhaps the pendulum has turned far too far, as you're saying, Alex, in the other direction, where we're keen to medicalise absolutely everything and then throw a load of taxpayers' cash at it in order to then keep them mollycoddled. As you say, it doesn't help. Ronald Reagan said the best welfare program in the world was getting a job. I had a period where I really struggled with these sorts of thoughts, and the best thing that I ever had was to get back into an office and start doing something again, and to start feeling that I was a contributing member of society again, because society is not just about what can you give me, it's about what can you give. That lovely old line by JFK, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. That's a wonderful thing that helps people find the dignity of work, the dignity of contributing again. Whereas for far too long, we let people just moulder away on council estates, on benefits, not finding the dignity of work. And we've gone full circle, and we're starting to do that again under the, as you say, the slightly bonkers rules about mental health problems.
Right. Purpose, community, structure, all things that human beings need to thrive. Russell?
Yeah, I get very concerned about this kind of epidemic of excuses, really. That, you know, kids, robust kids that, you know, are not...
Robust kids?
No, but robust on the basis that, you know, they're young, they're generally kind of fit and healthy, certainly from a physical perspective, are now using the excuse in many respects, maybe not all of them, but in many respects, of mental health to kind of step out of life's challenges, the fast lane almost. I'll give you an example. I genuinely this morning got on the train and there was a lad opposite me, and for some reason he tried to engage us all in conversation, which obviously is a very weird thing to do in Britain on a train. So, but I kind of, you know, I thought, well, I'm going on air with Alex in a minute. I suppose I should get some practice in on the way into talk. And this young lad, who was perfectly pleasant, by the way, was moaning about London. He said it's busy and it's expensive and I don't earn enough and that's why I can't live in London. And I listened to him and I did engage with him. And then I said, and this is a packed carriage of people on the way into London from Essex, I said, maybe this kind of it's busy, it's expensive thing, you don't earn enough, maybe that's your inspiration to work harder. And he looked at me in this kind of horrified way. It never, ever dawned on him that actually, rather than being a moaner and bemoaning those that can afford to live in London and earn, you know, big money, or in his words, £300,000 a year is what you need to kind of live in London, which is rubbish, by the way. Average house price is about 550 grand, so you certainly don't need to be on 300 grand to get a mortgage in that respect. Anyway, the people that I was sitting with, who were a little bit older, like myself, looked at me, smiled and said, well done, kind of thing. So we've got this kind of this situation in society where you've got youngsters think that the world owes them a living, and if they don't get onto Love Island or they don't get onto TikTok with 400,000 followers, they then think, well, my world is a disaster, I'm now going to disappear into depression, I'm not going to work, and so on. And people of my age, I just genuinely can't get my head around it.
You know what's super sad? When my brother's oldest, I think he's 10 years old, at primary school, they're all being asked, what do you want to do for a living? They also wanted to be a YouTuber. But this is it, isn't it, James? Now, how do we? There is a sense. I think Russell is right here. Look, I'm on the side of the kid on the train. London's too expensive. It's busy. It's horrible. I want to get out.
Work harder.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, work harder. Cheers, Russell. And then just have it all taken off you by Rachel Reeves. Barely worth getting out of bed. I sometimes feel like that sometimes. But the point is this. You know, Russell does have a point, which is we handle everything with kid gloves. You know, the approach to this will be, well, you know, if they really do have anxiety, then we can't force them to go to work. Well, we can't say we're going to cut off your TV, we're going to cut off your phone, or you can do those things. You know, there's still this sense of you've got to be careful, you've got to handle these people gently. So how do we sort of unpick this mess?
Yeah, I think that's right, that we are far too soft on these things and we're far too generous with money that isn't our own. But to push back slightly on some of elements of what Russell said there, young people do have it very, very difficult in lots of ways. By young people, I'm going to define that quite broadly, of up to sort of middle age at this point now. It is very, very, very difficult to get on the property ladder if you don't have the help of the bank of mum and dad.
No, it's rubbish.
We have not built...
No, it's not rubbish. It's right.
Rubbish.
Let me finish. Let me finish. No, let me finish this. It's very important to point out that we have not built nearly enough houses in this country to keep up with demand. Yes, a large chunk of that is the fact that we've had too many people come into this country, too many migrants, and we've not built enough. But we have not built nearly enough homes, and house prices have massively divorced from average incomes. We're not earning enough, and house prices are far too much because the supply has been massively restricted. That's not me whinging about anything, Russell. These are the facts. And unfortunately, the same people who did that, who've been complaining against any kind of house building that needs to be done, are the same people who demanded very, very generous welfare budgets by both parties, by all parties, all the time since the Second World War, which is why Britain is so enormously in debt now. You look at the kind of debt that we've got, which is, of course, just taxation deferred onto future generations. The same people who didn't let enough houses be built, didn't encourage enough growth, except perhaps in the Thatcher years, and have saddled us with all this debt, and now the people who are whinging about, oh, you snowflakes, you don't know how you got it. And they are, of course, the same people who are being too soft on these guys. So we've got a kind of toxic maelstrom now of younger people for whom are being saddled with all of this debt, forced to work terrible hours for crap pay in a society that's increasingly unsafe.
James, what are you talking about?
No, I'm a James here. All right, boomer.
Hang on, sorry. Working hard for a decent wage, like people have done for hundreds and hundreds of years, is pretty standard stuff, rather than letting people off the hook because they might have to work a little bit too hard, or they might not be able to afford an avocado sandwich, or maybe their Netflix is a bit expensive. Hang on, James, one sec. Hang on, you've had your rant about 3 or 4 minutes. James, let me now respond to you on the property side, which, unfortunately for you, I know a little bit about. Now, let me just tell you, the number of first-time buyers right now in the UK property market has rarely ever been higher. So if you want to talk about statistics, James, and by the way, I like you, and most of the time you and I agree on most things, I think, but the number of first-time buyers now hovers between 300,000 and 400,000
And what age are
in this
they?
country. The average age of a first-time buyer in Britain is about 34 years old. So, but there are 300,000 to 400,000 out of 1.2 million transactions that are first-time buyers. Interest rates right now, historically, are low. I know we talk about high interest rates, but I bought my first property when I was 18, when interest rates were 12%.
But this is what I'm saying. The average
they do
age
have the
now,
bank of
the
mum and
average
dad.
age is 34.
They don't pay stamp duty on their purchase. So this
But
nonsense.
it depends, that's all being scrapped. And
Hang
if
on,
it
guys,
comes to London, you do.
This nonsense that you can't buy a property as a first-time buyer, A, is defied by the actual data, the actual statistics, but also the fact that you're not paying stamp duty to first-time buyer, the fact that so much money does get put into the system by the bank of mum and dad, and so on,
Well,
and wage
look,
growth is up.
When it comes to
interest rates are palatable.
it's you know, you would have to pay stamp duty because the cap is under 500,000.
But we always have.
And
We
also,
always
quite frankly,
have.
look, I'm 41. I can't get a house. Blimmin' impossible to get a mortgage. I know, because I'd love to be able to do that. And what I'm not going to do is go and live in Zone 6 with a load of people who are going to try and burgle and rape me every 5 seconds.
Perish
James,
the
thank
thought.
you ever so much. It's always good speaking to you, and I'm with you all the way. It's blimmin' hard. I mean, I'm taxed. I think I pay about 60% tax, and I don't take anything from the state. And this is, I think, a lot of when you say young people, maybe mine and James's cohort, people in their 30s, 40s, feel they're being absolutely rinsed right now.
But can I just also
Rinsed.
just add that we should not characterise the woes of youngsters at, yes, 25 or 28 on the basis they can't yet buy a house. There's a bit more to life, actually, than just owning bricks and mortar. What's wrong with renting? There's nothing wrong with renting. There's nothing wrong with renting,
Says
James.
Mr. Property Expert. It's like, yeah, just rent. Your job is to help people buy houses or promote houses and stuff like that. You're Mr. House.
Stop moaning, work harder.
And